got a few slides. So my name's Stewart. I'm the Director of Channel and Sales for our IoT division. I wanted to touch on a couple of areas, really, just give, I guess, a bit of context as to where Arqiva are involved in IoT and M2M, and in particular to touch on what we're doing with our Sigfox technology as well. So feel free, if anybody's got any questions that go through, shout, or we can have a chat afterwards if you have any questions. I guess the first thing to note is we've as a company been involved in M2M and IoT for a number of years now. We have two separate low-powered wide area radio technologies that we use to address market needs in slightly but quite significantly different ways. We're very much focused as a business on business-critical IoT, as we like to think of it, where the needs of security are particularly high, where two-way message flow is particularly critical, but primarily where there is the scale of the business is such that there is a real need for a robust operational excellence behind the digital service that's being powered by the IoT technology. And for that, we've been building and still are building a network in the UK based on FlexNet technology, which is sub-gigahertz technology. We're one of the companies involved in building the UK's smart grid, so that's putting in smart electricity meters and gas meters into homes and small businesses. We're running that network in the UK just south of Sheffield, north up through Scotland, and when we're complete, we'll have meters in some 9 million plus households and buildings. We're also building out a smart water network with Thames Water in the Greater London area, where we're deploying with them 3 million smart water meters, again using this FlexNet technology. And it's particularly key, I think, it's one of the biggest dedicated M2M networks, certainly in the UK, possibly Europe. Some of the key things here are that it potentially drives a very different ecosystem, because the network type, with it being low-powered wide area, will be delivering somewhere in the region of 99.5% indoor coverage, which is quite key. It's just then think of what else can be done other than just metering down the line with this. But we also see an opportunity for a lighter touch IoT go-to-market, where perhaps the needs of business operation and message delivery are not as critical, as stringent as some of the requirements in the detailed metering side of the business. And for that, we've decided, we looked at a variety of technologies, and we decided to go for Sigfox as a technology, a radio technology. We've been building a network in the UK. We're already at 11 cities, 54 towns in the UK. So that gives us around about 30% of the UK's population coverage. And we're very much looking at building that, working very closely with Sigfox. And for us, the Sigfox was a particularly key technology, because ultimately, I think it's one of the key points that I was wanting to get across and discuss here today, was for us, the IoT and seizing the opportunity in IoT is more about how to identify and realize the enterprise value, how you actually, with an organization, regardless of its size, address the business model behind the IoT product or service or partnership. Because invariably it's that is the real challenge, not the technology. There are a variety of technologies out there that can address the problems. The biggest challenges, in our experience, are fundamentally getting the business model right and actually changing the organization to be able to use that. And this is really where Sigfox and low-powered wide area as general comes in, but Sigfox in particular, we feel. It's because if you, depending on which of the analyst views that you sort of believe in, whether it's 50 billion, 200 billion, I think the only thing that everybody agrees on is that the size of IoT is, the potential is huge. The numbers vary wildly. For us, we sort of see this as, if you take a step back for a moment in terms of those numbers and just have a think about what people are meaning, where even if you just talk about 50 billion connected objects globally, how many objects per head of population that actually means. And then just think of the lines of business and the economics in those lines of business as products and services. that one of the biggest challenges is the cost models, the economic value that exists in these products and services. Is there really enough economic value there to be able to deploy, to be able to actually have an advanced computer in a sensor, to be able to have to fit a SIM in that sensor, to be able to provision that SIM in the field, to be able to then physically fit with a specialist engineering team that sensor in an environment, on an object, in a system. And then to have to is there again enough value in that model to be able to warrant sending people back to change the batteries, to maintain it, to update it. The reality is, for the vast majority of objects in this IoT space, there is not the economic value that exists in the lines of business to be able to have that much of a hands-on approach to different objects at scale. Now, that's not for a minute suggesting that all of the other technologies that are out there in terms of connectivity are not appropriate. It may well be that where there's a need for large payloads of data or real-time, to the second updates, then there are a variety of other technologies that are essential. But the majority of objects in this new IoT world, we don't feel, and Sigfox feel, that there is the need to have that level of complexity, either in the technology or the device level, or the business model in terms of deployment. And so this is for us where Sigfox comes in, because really we talk about this providing a set of products and opportunities that are, where products are automagic. Sounds a bit cheesy, but what we mean by that is very simple, low-cost products that are pseudo-real-time, where actually the cost model is based around having a low-cost sensor that can be simply deployed and the battery switched on, the plastic strip pulled out of the batteries, it attached to a surface, and it's working, it's transmitting data. It's into the cloud, over the top, there's no gateway involved, you're getting data out of the system, the environment, the operation. And you can, that sensor, because it's using very small amounts of data, can actually survive off battery power for very long periods of time. The overall cost of ownership of that solution becomes very, very low. Therefore, you can get up to scale, a huge scale of IoT. So for us, this is where we see low-powered wide area being hugely important to the IoT space going forward, and in particular now, Sigfox being the right technology, we feel, to address this scale. The other key part of this, I haven't shown this on here, but is Sigfox, and Arqiva's flavor of Sigfox, is very much part of an international community. So Sigfox are working with companies all over the world, like Arqiva, who are then signing up and building networks using the Sigfox technology. So to businesses and consumers, there is a growing global footprint of Sigfox technology, and obviously a lot of work going on to try and get that adopted as a de facto standard. So there's a global footprint of network, already at some 24, 26 countries. Sigfox have aspirations to build that to significantly greater over the next few years. And there's as importantly, a growing ecosystem of organizations that either have from a chipset, a module, through to a device or platform, a capability ecosystem that's building for organizations to either help develop their own products or actually to take products and hopefully address a particular need. We're involved in a variety of different sectors, and I guess the challenge that we all have is that the IoT space is so broad, it's where to start. But I just wanted to call out a couple of examples. I don't intend to go through all of these, but asset management is a really good example of where we're seeing huge opportunity with Sigfox as almost to update a legacy environment, which is another really important part of the IoT space in terms of recognizing enterprise value anytime soon. And that is that we live in, and will do for most of our lives, a legacy environment. It's not all about starting up with a brand new technology and sensor to address a brand new product and service. There's huge value in actually being able to come up with a sensible, relatively light touch technology solution to smart enable existing infrastructure and solutions. And asset management's a really good one where, in terms of either simple asset monitoring of either out in the field or in terms of in buildings is another good example where I was explaining to some of the people earlier on that were in our session where a very simple box which looks like a room thermostat has 4 sensors in there: light, temperature, humidity, and sound to measure movement. All of a sudden you can take what is effectively a done building, a done room, and smart enable that with a battery powered product which just sticks on a wall. The battery can last for sort of 3 to 5 years depending on how much data is being sent. All of a sudden you're getting data out of a room where previously you would have had to have had either a GSM solution or a Wi-Fi solution, which of course are all possible, but Wi-Fi you're needing to actually, in most buildings, put in extra dedicated Wi-Fi. It's not the sort of, in a building like we're in now, it's not the sort of thing that commercially you would be able to just stand up a set of sensors. Either the tenant's IT department or the landlord's IT department are not going to want you to particularly mess around with the Wi-Fi. So you're having to have extra cost in that sense, whereas with a simple Sigfox solution, it's a battery-powered solution that works off the broad area network and starts deploying and getting data out of the system quickly. And there's a whole range of different sensors and solutions that are being successful in that. I think that the one key thing to think about, the difference here with Sigfox, is think of it more as a chirping technology rather than a transmission technology. So Sigfox is not about, in the same way as if you're used to with GSM connectivity, it's not about buying a volume of data, a megabyte of data or half a meg of data. You're buying effectively packages of messages. So with the duty cycle of the radio network that's governed by the spectrum that it operates in, a Sigfox sensor can send a maximum of 140 messages per day of 12 bytes per message, which sounds like it's a really small amount. But again, it requires a very different approach to thinking. And actually what you're doing, or what you need to do in most cases, is you're just needing to monitor and report the status change of something, of an environment, a temperature. And it might be that, I was using the example in terms of the in-room building piece, where it comes down to a more intelligent approach to how you're managing the data, what data you're actually getting out of an environment. And it could well be that actually it's not that important to you, to your operation, to know that the temperature every half degree increment, do you really need to know that? Or actually, is it just important to know that if the temperature gets above, it's normally at 20 degrees, if it gets above 22, I need to send an alarm off or a warning. In which case, actually all you need to do is send one tiny digit of information within your 12-byte payload when that happens, not every hour, every 5 minutes. So it's that intelligent use of data coupled with the low-cost sensors, the low cost of deployment, and the ability to keep those sensors in the field for long periods of time, running on battery power without companies having to go back to update or alter them, that derives a very low cost, total cost of ownership, which allows that scale of business. There's a lot of support in place as to how we actually help companies at different stages of either getting to understand Sigfox technology or helping to introduce them to organizations who can help them develop devices, or indeed take devices that are already developed and put into commercial use. So there's a variety of things here in terms of knowledge sharing activities that we put in place. Some very simple quick start packages. For example, in Sheffield there's already network coverage across all of Sheffield. There are quick start packages that companies can buy in terms of packages of messages. There are developer boards that are available. There are various solutions that are already available to actually start playing with and using and trying to investigate how Sigfox can drive economic opportunities for your different businesses and commercial opportunities. Quite a rich ecosystem that's been going now for a good couple of years globally as well. And that was all I was going to say. Happy to take questions, or obviously I'm here for the rest of the night, so happy to talk in more detail.
Anyone got a question?
One of your previous slides mentioned telehealth. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting area that has been. If you look at take the UK, we've got a clash in the UK, as of many countries, where you've got social care and healthcare clashing in terms of it's economically more beneficial to keep patients in their homes. It's better for patients to keep patients in their homes. Yet, whether it's social care, whether it's healthcare, we know that budgets have been constrained. So obviously technologies have been tried to have been used, but it's a really good example where they haven't all scaled, because if you look at a solution that, in terms of a bit of medical equipment, blood pressure monitoring, or some sort of diabetes is another good one, where it's some sort of regular measurement of some metric that the patient's having to make themselves. Historically, to enable that, the organisations have had to deploy relatively expensive solutions, and by that I'm meaning either a tablet computer, a mobile phone. Typically they've needed some sort of gateway, a router in the home. All of these things are very expensive bits of equipment. Plus also they need a lot of support. If they go wrong, you can't just deploy them and forget and just expect the patient to send the information. So certainly from our experience, not all of those solutions have scaled to meet the opportunity. So we've got some solutions with Sigfox where the Sigfox chipset is in a bit of medical equipment that's, the patient just has to, a blood pressure monitoring solution where patient puts the unit on their arm, switch it on, and then the device is simply, they've not had to connect the device to anything. The device is already connected to the Sigfox network, sends a simple reading of that from the patient. Patient, there's a download message comes back. The color on the device LED changes to say, yep, your message was received, and off the back of that, the solution, the Sigfox chipset, has a very simple set of APIs that, on the one hand, could integrate into an existing system at the doctor's surgery or the health authority, or indeed it could actually just be programmed from the provider to send a simple text or an email to the doctor's surgery, or indeed to the patients themselves or their family. Some other examples, there's a very good solution from a French company called Zeb Technologies, where they have a small box which Sigfox sensor in the box that monitors temperature and movement, but also has an NFC chip in there, so that when the social care worker comes to the door, they can tap and register, so they can effectively deal with the other challenge that the health authority has, is how do they monitor and manage and prove an SLA that the health worker arrived when they said they would, stayed for their allotted time, and not either too long or too short a time. So that's one use case of it, but also the box is also monitoring very simple things like temperature in the patient's home, which for a lot of people is a massive problem. But again, you don't need to be sending regular updates. It's just outside, that it's a message, a tiny data point of the temperature is outside of this particular zone. Send a warning. Again, that warning could be to the doctor's surgery, or it could be to the patient's family in the form of a text message. So that's simple use case. But also the solution monitors for movement. So if the patient has the box in that hallway, again, it's not something that they've had to worry about being connected to the Wi-Fi router. What happens if the Wi-Fi router switches off and needs some sort of intervention? So the box is just there and working, but it's also monitoring for movement. So if, for example, if by 9:30 there hasn't been any movement in the hallway, then it could send off a message to say, well, actually, perhaps to the family in the first instance, just ring up, has your grandmother or the patient, are they okay? Because there's not been any movement. It could be totally innocent, they're just having a lie-in, but it could be something more sinister, something like that. So there's that sort of use case. There's some other cases where we are doing a lot of work as Arqiva through the government and through the digital catapult, and involved in some of the NHS testbed works, where we're looking at Sigfox integrated into a variety of similar sort of solutions, or we've got a solution up in Bradford running with a consortium, which is looking at medicine adherence. So it's a very simple, working with a company called ADI, just outside of Leeds, who's developed the technology. They actually have a GSM and a Sigfox variant, because we haven't got coverage everywhere at this stage, but in both instances, with the Sigfox instance, it's effectively a smart button on a pill pot. So it's just a simple, to the patient, they do nothing. They just open the pill pot, and the simple message goes out that patients open the pill pot. Now there's a separate challenge, of course, that there's still a separate piece of how do you guarantee that the patient's taking the medication, but it's a better solution than at the moment, which is huge sums, many millions of pounds worth of medicines wasted because they're dispensed and never used. So there's a variety of those sorts of solutions. But it's a very interesting space, very challenging. But it's at the one level, it's this ability to be able to deploy and maintain that technology in a cost-effective way to scale, which is where we and a lot of others see the interest. It's not, from minutes suggesting it's the only connectivity technology in that space, but for lots of scenarios, it's opening up some very interesting opportunities.
Anyone else? One quick question.
What's the unit cost of one of these fairly passive, simple devices for Sigfox?
This is the challenge. It depends on what you're talking about. It depends on how many, and it's what I would say is from our experience, for a like-for-like solution, we're seeing an equivalent Sigfox solution for an equivalent GSM coming in at a quarter to a fifth of the price. But it totally depends on the volume you're looking to buy, and what the sensor is needing to do. I mean,
Can you give me a range, just an idea?
Well, we've got some sensors from sort of £20 through to £80. Typically within those sorts of prices with connectivity included for 1 to 3 years.
Okay.
The goal is to try and drive the price down. I mean, interestingly, an organisation, a company called YSOL, have just recently, just before Christmas, launched a series of Sigfox chipsets down at $2 for not huge volumes as well. So it's the component side of the Sigfox solution and the ability to have a relatively simple computing power on the device allows a lower cost point. And so, Sigfox's ambition is to drive things even lower. I mean, it's very much the mentality really is one of trying to get Sigfox to be a utilitarian IoT network to enable the scale.
Yeah.
But as to cost, it depends. Is the honest answer.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, yeah.
Okay.
Round of applause.
Okay.